All right, greetings. This is Jordan Painter with another iteration of the senior project for Lancaster Bible College Communications Department. This project is titled Professionally Christian, which is a series of conversations that I hold with people that I've met in my own life who I think not only live out the Christian life on a Sunday morning in a church, but also in their daily lives, with their workplace, with their peer groups, with their friends, and most immediately with their families and in their home lives. The idea here is to be able to provide a little bit of wisdom. We had a lot of creative reign on this project, and I wanted to be able to look at something that I was proud of that would ultimately, I think, go much further than what I had the extent of doing. So here today, we have my friend David Jenkins, who I know as DJ. DJ and I know each other for a handful of years. He is currently a non-commissioned officer in the U.S. Air Force, and I think he does a remarkable job of balancing the roles of full-time service member, husband, new father, and ultimately a Christian. So we'll get into our backstory a little bit, DJ, but kind of just, I guess, real quick, brief introduction, high notes. What's your background with coming to faith, coming into the church, and how you kind of came to be who you came to be?
Well, man, I appreciate you having me on. It's awesome to be a part of your senior project, especially as you're about to graduate. I know Man and I are super proud of you and everything that you've become over the last few years. Just a little bit about myself. I got saved when I was 15 at a Bible camp down in North Carolina. It's called the Wilds. I grew up in the church. Grew up with an awesome family who were amazing role models for me and my sister. But I did fall away from the faith for a little while and strayed. But I'm thankful that the Lord brought me back. Um, I think I kind of grew up with an inherited faith, so I finally found the Lord for myself and had that real relationship rather than seeking religion for a long time. So yeah, I got saved. I've been married now to my awesome wife for just about 9 years. She's also in the military. Um, Beautiful Christian woman. We've had an awesome marriage that has went through some hills and valleys that I think most all of us have. But like again, the Lord has brought us through time and time again, and only because of Him are we still here. Have a beautiful son. He's just turned a year old.
Yeah.
Had him in Germany, had him during COVID. So it's been a crazy last few years being overseas with a newborn, not being able to travel and have the perks of living over here, but awesome things are happening. So a little bit about myself, man.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's super cool. Yeah, and obviously here we're the conversation. I want to kind of put a spotlight on you and kind of the wisdom that I think, you probably want to call yourself wisdom filled, but that I've definitely seen and had you partake onto my life, and I know would be a blessing to other people. So the main reason here is put a spotlight on kind of your discernment, but just for the sake of why I kind of had DJ on here, we met each other. I want to say maybe you can remember a little bit more direct than me, but I want to say it was 2013 timeframe. You had just gotten stationed to where I was growing up, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to say you would have had to have been pretty new to the military, pretty new to the married life. I don't believe Amanda was even here yet when you first moved here, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think that's about right, man.
And we kind of met each other just kind of loosely through friends. Like I was working at a nutrition store at the time, and we kind of became just friends at the gym. But I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't say that we had meaningless conversations, but it was kind of just like get to know you, like on the surface
Yeah.
type stuff. And then I remember like a fateful day that I'll carry with me forever was we had a conversation. You invited me real offhand, like real just nonchalant, invited me to a church. And I kind of agreed to it before I actually knew what I was getting myself into. And I like the way you put inherited your faith because I felt like I was in a similar boat. I had a praying grandmother who till this day, just loves the Lord and wants to see her family and her children come to the Lord. And
Yeah.
I don't think I was ever like a reckless youth, so to speak, but I definitely was just living my life, and I wasn't in the Word every day, wasn't in the church. And once we ended up going to church together, that just lit a spark in me. And I mean, I felt a true, like just presence of the Lord from the very first service on that Sunday. I remember the sermon and everything, man. It was about
Mm-hmm.
relationships, and I think that kind of like blossomed our relationship a little bit to like a more like a Christ-centered friendship. I think
Yeah.
over the years, even if we were states or in this case countries apart, you've always been a mentor and somebody that I can kind of call on, especially when I was new in my faith. And I look back on some of the things I've called you up, complaining about, and oh, what do I do here? What's going on? And I think it's funny, looking back on it now, because it's like, man, like that was like, those were layups in the faith that I
Yeah.
was stumbling on, and I'm calling you up in the middle of the night, like, what's going on? So that's awesome, man.
I think we've had a lot of similarities in that role because you saw me as a young husband. I've seen you as a young husband. We both worn the uniform together. We've been able to travel together and be around each other in a lot of different ways. Like my marriage has struggled and you were around it to give advice through that time. And it's always been God-centered. So I think we've been on two different like paths at times, but like they've always been very similar and they've always intersected to where it seemed eerily like familiar. So
Yeah,
it's been
I can't agree more, man. And like I said, we have that kind of, at least I feel it, where maybe we don't talk every day. Whenever we talk, it's like we never stop talking. And I feel like we've kind of, I mean,
fruitful.
2013, 2014, man, that wasn't too recently. Yeah, 6, 7, what is that? Coming up on 8 years. We've known each other for a while, and it's pretty cool to see.
We're dating
Um,
ourselves.
yeah, we're dating ourselves real quick, especially you, man. So obviously, we talked about a little bit of a background of what you had in the church, and I think we both have a basic understanding of we're failed. We sin every day. We sin even though we know better. We still do it, and in that
Mhm.
regard, that'll never change. But I think we both
Yeah.
can kind of understand that there's a massive difference between somebody who, and we all know these mindsets of, well, God loves me for who I am. So I'm going to go carry myself however I want to do whatever I want, say whatever I want, consume whatever sort of media I want,
Mhm.
and then still just act like everything's totally fine in the relationship with the Lord. There's a world of difference between that and someone who says, okay, Lord, I'm actively seeking you. I'm seeking your word, your guidance, and your discernment in my life.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've seen you do. Like whether it was me asking you advice and you in turn would sow into me God-centered words of wisdom, or if it was something that you were going through and you were actively looking for what God was looking for in your life and then abiding by that. So I definitely think we're on the same page there. I don't want to spend too much time kind of belaboring that point. But one thing I want to kind of get on board with, and this isn't like a huge knock on anything the military's done or the workplace in general, but I remember when I was leaving for the military as a young guy, I was like, I don't know, 17 or 18, and I was new in my faith, and you said, hey, just be careful because sometimes these people might mean well or they might act like they're nice people and they might just be generally not in the works. They might not even know
Mhm.
that they're pushing something that's not God-centered.
Yep.
And I took that in face value thinking like, what does he think? I'm not going to take care of myself? Does he think I don't know what I'm doing? What's the big deal? But I look back on that and you're exactly right. So just whenever you're around people who are from similar age backgrounds or similar situations and you're in close quarters and there's just a recipe for sin and
Mhm.
whatever sort of stumbling blocks a young man can find, that you're going to find that when you're away from home and you have freedoms for the first time. So what was your journey like coming through? You went to the military just like me, real young guy, got married early on. How were you
Mhm.
able to navigate those waters? And what was that growing process like for you to where you were able to be like, okay, hey, the guys down the hall might be friendly, but it's
Yeah.
different than what you're trying to find in God. If that question makes any sense there.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I had a lot of growing pains. I came in with faith, but my faith had not been tested yet. Um, like I said, I kind of grew up with that inherited faith, and by the time I came to my own relationship with the Lord, I think I only went to the military 2 years after 2 years of college. So it was only 5 or 6 years after I got saved to where I joined, and it hadn't really been put through a test or the fire yet. So when
Mm,
I went through, the military, I became very like a chameleon. I thought I needed to fit in with everybody, to where I would give pieces of myself to groups or other people that I should never have,
mm,
whether it was just trying to be a cool guy or be liked or just because I was in a new environment. I found myself with people that with people that I never should have been with, doing
mm,
things I never should have been doing, not necessarily bad things, but just wasn't who God created me to be and wasn't like who I even wanted to be, to where I was
mm,
always, and now I'm a person where I look back on that and I have a very tight circle. I have trusted people around me to I know whether in good or bad situations they're going to give me advice that I might not even want to hear.
Mm,
but it's like loving, it's kind and caring. So I think my faith went through a lot of growing pains
mm,
in the military. And I think I only grew to be kind of where I am today through the errors and trials,
yeah.
through, kind of some tests the Lord put me through.
Mm,
Um, Not even who put me through, but just my pride taking over and falling on my face so many times and just knowing and getting to know his grace and mercy more and more to where I saw his grace and mercy as, this big, bold thing in my life that I finally realized what my salvation was,
mm,
how short I was um, before the cross. And that cross just got bigger and bigger. And I became just so much more thankful for what the Lord did for me on the cross rather than me trying to carry the burdens on my own, create the friendships on my own, do everything on my own. Even with Amanda, I think I was still with my wife, I was still trying to do so much on my own that that's what the Lord died for me for. So I went through a lot of trial and error and growing pains. And I think I can only give my success to just learning and being a sponge and adapting to, things I did wrong and just taking them as lessons and just trying to overcome.
yeah. 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 It's like what is that in John? That verse of "As I decrease, He must increase." I think
Absolutely.
that's a huge
Hmm.
thing, and it's
Yeah.
funny you bring up pride because I remember I had a pastor that this little segue actually married my wife and I way before that ever happened. He was just kind of a mentor to me, and I remember telling him almost like proud that I was like, yeah, I'm real prideful, and I'm a proud man. And I was saying that, and in my head, I'm like, yeah, like I thought I was in the right. And he's like, no, he's
Hmm.
like, we'll work on that, brother. We'll work on that. And I'm thinking, no, like this is like I'm a proud guy. Like I guess we'll have to figure this one out. So that same individual ended up being real influential to me. And like I said, a couple years down the line, like he gave premarital counseling to my at the time fiance and I, and he made sure that our relationship was Christ centered. And he ended up marrying us in 2018. And I actually just had him on for this project last week, actually. So
Fantastic.
yeah, and he's a great guy and a lot of great things to say about him. But the reason I bring up that whole story is, obviously I'm now going on, I guess you do the math, 3 years and some change of marriage and realizing how my priorities seem to shift daily and how I kind of start to see things differently. And I
Hmm.
think that's something that's worth kind of allowing, myself to ask you on is I think we know these obvious sins that the workplace or that life can bring that pull us from being Christ centered 24 hours a day. The obvious ones, doing things you're not supposed to with people that you shouldn't be around. Like those are the ones that anyone can look at and think that's a stumbling block. That's going to get in the way of someone's success. But I think there's also a mighty way to look at it where work could be an idol just the same, and I think we
Hmm.
look at hardworking people or we look at people who are driven or ambitious and we say that, that, hey, those are positive qualities, but by that same metric, and I bring this up because I know the life in the military can be quite strenuous and you can have some long days there. How have you been able to kind of, or what does your process or thought pattern look like as far as like making sure, like, yes, I'm going to put my best foot forward for the Lord in my work because He's blessed me with His occupation, but also realize that there's only 24 hours of the day, and you have obligations to your wife and son as much as you do have your work. How have you kind of looked
Hmm.
at that, and how has that looked like as you've kind of gone through the military as well?
I think we've just had to find and strike the perfect balance. Because I've been in a lot of demanding roles. Thankfully, with my career field, anytime I leave my work environment, my work stays at work, and I cannot bring it home with me. So I've been very thankful for that. It's also been a burden at times because of just kind of the tempo in what I do, to where it can be very taxing mentally. But I think it's just striking that perfect balance and knowing, like you said, you know we're prideful people, but I don't say prideful in a bad way. Is like you and I take pride in everything we do,
Mm,
whether it's at home, the gym, training, for whatever. We want to be the best, even in a bad way. So competitive, we want to be the best at what we do. And I think that's a good thing if we can keep those things in good perspectives and not let them become idols. but I also know that the Lord has given me a work ethic at work to be the best I can be there. But that's not what he put me on this earth for, like that same work ethic I want to then transition when I leave work to be the best husband, the best father, the best spouse, etc. at home. And that's where, our circle grows. He's blessed us with those relationships. And that's where, especially as husbands and fathers and, godly husbands, godly fathers, that's our sphere of influence. And then it starts to grow when we start to influence each other at home and our sphere of influence grows. But I think it's just finding the balance and knowing that as important as our work in the military is, and, being Christians at work, and whether that's being very vocal about our faith or just having our actions be our faith throughout the day and people knowing there's something different about us by the way we walk and talk and not be influenced by the terms, the words, X, Y, and Z that's said. The balance of knowing that home life is what we're here for, influencing our kids and our wives and our family and friends, like that's the meat and potatoes of stuff. So as much as I love my job and stuff and what it's done for our family, I know that like that's not what really is important. And I've had to learn that, especially going into a new career field. I'm so excited about what the future holds, but I think I need to continue to put it in perspective and know that that's not everything. But the real influence and where the Lord needs David to be more present is at home with his wife and his son. So I think it just comes from, again, trial and error, falling on my face so many times, but getting back up and just thanking the Lord for what he's done for me right there.
Yeah, I love that, man. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that balance is it's a difficult thing. And it kind of comes from kind of calling on the Lord for it and being able to kind of have the wisdom and figuring that one out. And you bring up Amanda as we kind of had conversations, and you brought up something that's funny. Like you bring up like the gym and how you can be competitive in fitness, right? And that's something that I think your answer is going to be very similar to the previous home life balance. I think it's going to be similar to this, but that's something I don't talk about much or haven't had a lot of conversations on, is the idea of what I wouldn't just say the gym, but I would say like exercise or fitness or
exactly.
yeah. And I think just from, I think we both had, again, similar experiences in that regard, where we've seen how something that should be good or something that should be like inherently productive become an idol, and it becomes very centered in something that's certainly not God. Whether it's vanity, there's a lot of vanity in, I guess, what you would call the umbrella of fitness, and there's also a lot of, I don't know what you call it. Vanity is a good way to put it. I think there's a lot of greed. There's a lot of very selfish nature of being very into something. You find a lot of self-satisfaction or personal worth in attention you're getting from other people based off of how you look or what your social media looks like or how you're performing. And then I think that, and I think you'll agree to this, and I guess I'll ask you to kind of touch on it, is like at the same time, we talk a lot about in the church, as we should, about the heart, and the heart is important, and the soul is what matters. But I think it's a little bit neglectful if we don't look at the physical body and we don't look at who we are and this vessel God's given us and the good that we can do. Not everyone's born with 2 arms and 2 legs or the ability to run with their families, and to be able to, I think it's spiritually sound to say, hey, you know what, like God's given me the opportunity and this being, I want to be able to maximize it again, because just like I want to be the best in the workplace to help glorify God or to help be vocal with my faith or be the best husband I can be, I think there's a lot of similarities to actual like exercise and the physical fitness as well. You agree with that?
100%. I think some people, and I think maybe some personalities like you and I, have to tread carefully, because again, we strive to be the best at what we do. And if we start under that umbrella of fitness and taking care of ourselves and health and wellness, if we start, getting into a gray area of, it becomes an idol, takes all the time and priority over our family, over our work. Even if non-Christians or Christians start seeing us and they're questioning kind of, our walk and what we're doing, like, that individual has said, that they're a believer, like, I think we need to have the ability to take a step back and be like, is this becoming an idol is this taking more time than I should be giving it? And for me, that's exactly what happened. I could not find the sweet spot of
Mm,
being a fitness individual and also being a Christian.
mm,
It took over, it consumed me, like you're talking about. You want it on, you're more focused on the social media, what you're putting out there. You think you're a brand, and like you're just a little tiny fish in a huge pond where your influence can be huge, but it's not going to be huge based on worldly standards. Like you're putting out there worldly stuff, your influence could be sparking a small fire in that small little community of your social media, for instance, spreading the word and then letting the Lord plant those seeds and like see the ripple effects. But like you're so focused on these worldly things, and it consumed me. It consumed my wife too for a while, to where we had to completely take a step back, delete all social media, delete everything. And our walk with the Lord had never been better, because we finally saw how far we had strayed from Him. And thankfully, He was able to open our eyes to that. But we had just now, and I would say 5 or 6 years later, find the sweet spot to where we're feeling fulfilled in our, a fitness journey, but also at the same time, it is not our number one priority. It's not our number two priority. He is, and our family is. So, again, it goes back to stumbling and falling so many times, but having the right people around us that give sound, godly counsel to bring us back into the fold and just point out some small errors we've made along the way.
yeah, that's awesome. That reminds me so much of, I actually just was on my wife and I, we ended up taking a trip down to the beach this past week, and not to get too far out in left field, like we were not focused on our phone. And this social media, man, I'll get you in trouble, man. Like spend a lot of time on them and everything. And even if you're just like using me as time killers, that's still a negative influence. Because I think like we were spending time with each other. We were in nature, and my wife has said it a million times. I agree with her wholeheartedly. When you're quiet and you're still before God, and you can take in the creation, like it just feels so
true,
much
man.
more. It just feels so much more like right, like in your heart. Like it just feels like this is how it's supposed to be. So I agree like 100% with that, man. And I remember it must have been a handful of years ago, I like lost contact with you, and I was like, "How do I get a hold of you, man?" And you're like, "Oh, I got rid of all my social media." I'm like, "Well, you could give me your phone number
Yeah.
or something before I got to send like carrier pigeon trying to find you across the
That's
country."
how it
Like,
happened. I got rid of all my social media. I moved overseas. I was on like my third overseas phone number. I lost contact with so many people, and so many people for right reasons. I lost contact with some people that I wish I never would have, but it was a breath of fresh air to completely remove myself. And like you said, God intended things first in specific ways to where we see Him through these lenses, and then it consumes us rather than through this, a phone
yeah,
or a screen in our face, and then it just puts us in a bad spot. So yeah,
yeah,
we're back now though. We're back now though.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. You can get rid of a lot of people, but I'm gonna find you, man, no matter where you're going. Well, hey, DJ, like I said, for anyone who's listening, staff or professors, whoever else, like DJ's in Europe right now, so he's way ahead of our East Coast time zone. So it's getting late into the evening. So I want to be respectful of his time, and I just want to kind of acknowledge you, A, for taking a little bit of time to kind of help impose a little bit of wisdom, and B, just for being that friend, mentor, spiritual big brother in the sense. And I don't take that lightly. As I grow just a little bit older, I always I use the term friend much less, I noticed, and I like the fact
Amen.
that you're still in my friend circle, and I'm still in yours.
Absolutely, brother.
All right, cool. So we're gonna probably wrap this up here, and that's another iteration for Professionally Christian. Thanks again, David Jenkins.